Welcome to That Moto Show with Dirt Bike TV's Jake Clark and producer Donnie Bales.
Welcome. 13. That's pretty cool, right?
Oh, yeah.
Who was 13?
Oh, Ricky Johnson.
Ricky Johnson.
Come on now.
Phil Lawrence.
Heath Voss.
Who else? Heath Voss.
Yep.
Who else that comes to mind?
In recent years, not as many.
Yeah. Are we skipping? You don't need number 13?
Was it Sebastian Tortelli, 13?
Yeah, he ran a 13.
Yep.
I think people are more superstitious now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird deal.
Weird deal. But RJ, come on now.
So, lucky show for us. Lucky because we got Spencer back. Welcome.
Back.
He's been here this week. We've been riding. We rode Glen Helen Tuesday and Thursday. He's going back tomorrow. And it's kind of cool riding. This is the first time I've ridden before we did a show.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's got me all, I was thinking about stuff.
We've ridden after shows.
Yeah. You guys went right after.
That's right.
And rode.
Twice.
I've done that a few times. Okay, so riding before.
Spencer being here is like, he just flies in for games now. He's just like, he's the important guy now.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Appreciate Donnie picked him up at the airport.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, we're excited to have this one going. For those that have any questions, just remember to email us. This episode's really cool for those guys that are curious about suspension. We're gonna have some really cool suspension tech for you coming up with our guest Dave Schmidt. So, and we're gonna be able to talk and answer a lot of your questions. I would say suspension questions as a whole are probably 30-40% of the questions we get. The rest are, my bike doesn't start.
Right. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah. Guys, they describe it. Some of them are so tough because the guy's got a 25-year-old two-stroke, right? And he's describing it, and it doesn't start. I'm like, how old is the piston in there? It's fine. It's fine. I'm like, okay.
I just changed it, but they never actually know when they change it.
They have no clue. Okay, so
Dave's a good guy to go to too. He's changed many of my blown fork seals for me in a pinch. Yeah.
So a couple things. Let's go over. So things that have been weighing on me. I'm going to talk a little bit about, since we were talking about things that don't start. First thing I was going to talk about is we had a rider and follower, Andrew T, wrote me, and he had a 500 EXC. It was a 2017 that was giving him problems. He checked all this stuff. He replaced the starter relay. He checked the fuel pressure. He did all the normal things you would do. He wrote us, and I gave him a few things to check and some ideas, and then he found out the problem was. He said, the other day he got back with me. He says, I just wanted to share with you that I found on my electrical issue on his EXC, he had a broken wire in the air box, right by the air filter, and we'll have a picture of that. It was at the power relay, and it was under the wire sleeve. It was about 2 inches in, so it was totally hidden. He had to peel back the wire to find this broken wire. And as you can see in the photo here, for those guys that are watching, so when you're troubleshooting bikes, sometimes the problem can be very difficult to find. And he was able to find it in this wire harness. He fixed it and got it solved. So good job for Andrew. So troubleshooting bikes can be very difficult, and it's very difficult to pay someone to do it because you're going to have hours.
Especially electrical.
And you're throwing parts at it. We have a video that talks about, especially on the KTM models, they can be a little quirky, electrical problems, fuel problems. So we have a video that talks about all those things to check first. So hopefully that helps you out. But today we went riding. And Spencer and I both rode 350 SXFs. 23, 24, bikes, the new bikes, and good time, right, Spence?
Very awesome.
He liked it. He said he liked it better than riding the 450 at the track. What'd you think?
Yeah, I think a 350 is a little bit better for me. And then again, I've only ridden my off-road 450 at the track. I don't think I've ever ridden a motocross 450, but it's close enough.
You rode my 500.
Well, yeah,
you did.
It's like that thing's better than anything. So it's like I can't even compare it.
Yeah. There you go.
So I've been riding the last 6-7 trips, whatever, a long time to Glen Helen. I've been on the YZ250F, which I really love, but being on a 350 is pretty dang good. So
you got to wear earplugs with that 250 though.
And that was a nice thing I didn't have to do today. I didn't have to wear earplugs. So I didn't have to wear earplugs, and I shot a video while I was riding, and one of the things I see the Yamaha sign, I'm like, why doesn't Yamaha make a 350?
No joke. I was picking up, I got a new bike, right? And I was talking to my friend that owns that dealership, and he was saying, Yamaha needs to make a 350. Yeah. And Yamaha asks him, it's Grant Langston, right? So Yamaha asks him, hey, so what can we do? And he goes, make a 350. And I think their fear is it's going to take away from the 450s.
Yeah.
That's their fear.
And when it would, but it would...
You're going to sell bikes.
Yeah. You're going to sell more.
There are dudes
right now they're losing all the 350 sales.
All 350 sales.
All these older guys
so that
who want to ride them.
Yeah.
And they've been Yamaha their entire life, and now they have to go because they're like, oh, 250 is too slow for me, and 250s or 450 is too much. And they're diehard Yamaha, but they're like, oh, well, I guess I gotta get a 350.
My understanding is KTM sells more 350s than anything else.
That's what I understand. It's 350 engine between the XCF, SXF, EXCs. 350 engine, the highest selling engine from KTM Group is what I understand. So I've heard that. So, and no one races them, at least in official classes, right? The guys can race them off road and so forth.
When you go to the vet races, they're everywhere.
Right. So 350 to me is a great size bike. Hey, let's talk about your new bike.
Yeah.
What do we got?
2024 EXC 500.
500 EXC.
Yeah.
Come on, let's get it right.
500 EXC.
EXCF or whatever, right? Like you have to
I get confused because they changed it with the F, and I'm like, wait, what is it anymore?
All right. So got a brand new one. It's not even been run yet.
No.
Right? And I picked up today on the way here. I went by.
I wrote it down in the riverbed.
Oh, you did already get it out there?
Yeah, I took.
It's pretty corked up, huh?
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like a sewing machine.
Yeah, it's really quiet. And I picked up a new ECU from Jamie at Twisted. I just bought it, and I got a quick shift. This is we have a video we did this winter where we did put on. My buddy Scott got one on his bike. So this is everything to put a quick shift on that 500 EXC. So just adding this and pulling out the reed cage out of the air boot and a muffler from FMF. Just those three things. 21 horsepower. 21 horsepower. What it picked up. So it's pretty awesome.
I think it's like 38 stock, right, or something like that.
Yeah,
it's slow.
It makes it like a real bike. It's like I want to be a real boy.
500. They're selling a 500.
So
at first I thought I was riding my Grom when I rode it down the street.
Right, this bike's only going to be ridden in Arizona, so it's just fine with all of our.
It's moving to Arizona.
Yep. So anyway, so cool deal there. Oh, on our ride at Glen Helen today, what I was getting at is I think I'm preferring the 350 at the track more than the 250F. The other thing, it was drizzling my whole moto. First moto was like 45 minutes, okay? And it was drizzling, and we got to use our roll-off system on our X-Brand goggles, and it was awesome. Like, because other guys, I see guys wiping, I see guys stopping and wiping, and I probably would do one, and it was when it was heavy, 1 to 2 a lap. I was able to pull. And I don't do it over a jump or anything. I'm not, trick like that. But, I get to a safe straightaway.
You pull over and do it and then keep going.
Right before the start straight at the top of the little log jump.
That's right.
Yeah. Or the top of the hill.
Yeah. One is 2. So anyway, so that was a huge help. That's really useful. What's funny is years ago, I would only run roll-offs everywhere. But I kind of, get annoyed by the side vision, but you get so used to it. Oh, I will say an X-Brand setup, I think a lot of companies are doing this, but X-Brand has 2 lines here, so the film doesn't get stuck to the lens.
Yeah, it stays away from the lens.
And you have this little visor protector here that keeps the water from running down.
We used to have to run duct tape. Remember that?
You'd fold duct tape your own.
Yeah, make your own.
Make your own. That was a job.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was really helpful on the ride today. The other thing I want to touch on is a couple weeks ago, and Spencer will have a few little photos. We're going to have more content coming. We had our TE 300 a couple weeks ago out in Utah. We went on a trail ride to some epic desert stuff, and we were back and forth from that bike to the carbureted version, and then as well as on that 450 RX. And out there in the desert, I still kind of feel like I prefer a 4-stroke on the desert riding. Even the 450.
He's getting old or something. He's switching over.
Yeah.
I mean,
so and now we're going to be.
You're going to hurt people's feelings.
I know, because 2-stroke guys get really offended. They think you're not a man.
Right.
You're not fully, committed if you ride 4-strokes and just want to give in. But I like riding a lot. So now we're going to take this TE 300 up to the mountains in Idaho and Utah over the next, and it'll be in a few, like 4 weeks we're going, right? To our big trip. So we have like 4 weeks, and we're going to be doing a big trip, and we'll be riding it back and forth against 350s. And I think in the mountain trails, I think it's going to be a little bit more fun. We rode it there last summer, and I did like it a lot, the XCW version. So I think in the mountains, for me, I think it's going to be just fine, and what I'll probably enjoy more. But we'll see. I think the desert stuff, where you get those sand washes and the deep stuff, I think you want to be on that 350, that 4-stroke power. So that was my thought on bikes as of late. So, and we got that. So what do you think? Anything else? Time to bring in our guest?
I think, we can bring this guy in. He might know a thing or two about suspension.
Let's do it. Okay, here we are. We are with our guest, Dave Schmidt from Southern California. He's been doing suspension for 48 years. How long has it really been?
Whew.
You weren't prepared?
28 years. I've been doing it. I've been in business for myself for 25.
25, okay. So Dave Schmidt's kind of a mainstay at, especially at the Southern California tracks, amateurs, pros. He's helped a ton of amateurs who turn pros and then early in their careers before they get on a team. He's worked with some great guys. So real quick, because we want to get to the techie stuff. Most of the guys that are listening to this, they want suspension answers, but tell us how you got into moto and working in the industry and so forth before you started doing your own stuff.
Well, I've been riding. My brothers bought me a motorcycle when I was 2, and so I've just been riding my whole life. And then we moved out to the Inland Empire when I was 14, and just started riding and racing. Paris Raceway was in our backyard, and I raced all the way up to like local pro, got injured, and then had to go to work. And construction wasn't it for me. So an amateur rider asked me to be his mechanic. So I went on the road with him as a mechanic. He went on to be a pro for Nolan Sizzler Yamaha. So we went in-house as a mechanic there.
Who was the rider?
Jerry Allman.
Yeah.
He was with Jeff Willow and Tony Almeridio back in 97. And then he got hurt, so I went in-house and just started building motors and suspension and pipes and different things. And
at Nolene.
At Nolene, yeah.
And did you move up there?
No, I drove there every day.
Oh,
for like $9 an hour. Yeah, loved it. I loved every minute of it. Sometimes I just stay there, work late, sleep in the box van. Just loved working for the teams, working for the riders.
So there's one part of your story that was similar is that you got to local pro. I got to local novice. So that was it was a little.
You're still at local novice.
Now I'm vet novice. It was 40 novice and then 50 novice. Yeah. So anyway, all right. So let's get back to your story.
Yeah. So Nolene ended up being bought out by K2 Motorsports, and they shut down the motorcycle division and moved the mountain bike division to Washington. And we were all stuck looking for jobs. So,
but now you were there through kind of the cool time of Nolene, when they, because and Clark Jones. Tell a little bit about Clark Jones, who owned and run Nolene.
Clark's like at the end of the day, he's like the rest of us, man. He just loved dirt bikes. He just kept working on them, playing with them. He was part of the Jones family, married in the Jones family, and they all just loved dirt bikes. And
wasn't he originally at Yamaha?
Who's that?
Clark. Wasn't he originally at Yamaha or did something at Yamaha?
I'm not sure.
But he is still passionate. He's quite a bit older, and he still goes out and he loves to work on he's doing a lot of vintage bike stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, so I see him out there. It's really cool.
He still just loves dirt bikes, and that's what that whole shop was built around. And, to be honest, like, I didn't even have suspension up to that point. And then they were allowing me to start testing some stuff while I was up there. On my lunch break, riding dirt bikes in the field up in Adelanto, and I started to feel what good suspension was, and I just loved it. I just wanted to go more and more and play with more, and we were up there with Jake Thompson, a suspension by Jake, and Todd Brown was there at the time. He's gone on to be the Husky suspension guy, GM Sewer suspension guy. So Kaipo was there.
Oh, that's
Kaipo's
right.
now Cowie guy. So
Kawasaki.
we all came from Nolene, so we had good times up there. A lot of fun.
And it's like most suspension guys either came from Nolene or Race Tech.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, it's great, and you've been at it. And now, when it shut down, you were looking for jobs. Is that when you decided to start your own deal?
Yeah, I mean, I went around and tried to get a job at Shop Rail Performance back in the day, and they were saying we didn't have enough experience, and so I was sitting at home just looking for something, and my phone started ringing, and people wanted me to do their stuff, out of my garage. So we just kept going and made some business cards, and here we are, 25 years later.
That's awesome. So, anyway, that's what it's about. You talked about how hard it was and driving for that low money. We've talked about this in the show before with some of the mechanics we've had in here. Everybody's pretty passionate about working in this industry because I get a lot of guys asking me about working, and I know you've even have had helpers, over the years, and it's getting harder to find good helpers. We talk about that, guys who want to work as teenagers or early 20s, right?
Yeah.
So that's a tough part. But for us that, who really were into it, you have to work hard to stay in it, right? I call myself a dream crusher because I'm always telling guys, hey, be careful, pump the brakes if you want to get into this deal. No, I try to tell them what you're in for. So I said sometimes getting a real, getting an education and whatever, and a real job might be a better path. I don't say for sure it is, but it can be. So
it's more work than money.
Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely.
In moto. So you have to, it is nice that you really enjoy it and you can relate, and he's able to talk with guys about.
Yeah, but you know what? On a little side note, you know what? I tell the rest of my family's not into moto at all. And my sister's always like, oh, you go to these races? Do you see anybody you know? And I'm like, it's a traveling circus. I go, the industry is so small, you know everybody at the race. And if you don't know that person, you know a person that knows that person. Yeah. And so it's kind of, that's what's nice about the community, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and if you see a guy at the races every weekend, helping and working on bikes, he's not making any money. He's just there for the passion of it. He wants to help the up-and-coming riders. So shake his hand, tell him thank you. It's they're putting in the work.
That's for sure. We've had some great mechanics in here, and I've learned a lot of stuff from you. And when I get a lot of suspension questions, Dave helps me on a lot of these questions. So when I get tech questions, that's somebody I ask. Because guys are like, how do you do this? And I'm like, well, first of all, I don't do a lot of my own suspension. So it's a whole lot easier. We got too much going on to be doing that. I got Brad helping me on engines and guys like Dave helping on suspension and other companies. So it's a huge help. It's too difficult to be doing it all. So it's nice to have good help like that and also good tech help. And so getting that kind of tech advice is crucial. So we want to start getting into some tech questions first, because that's one of the first things we want to do. We're going to someday do a YouTube video, really walking guys through setup, setting up sag and basic setup of their bike. But we get a lot of questions. We're going to start with one from a reader here, a follower. And we're going to start with this guy's question because we're going to want you to start. And I think it's a couple parts, so we can take it in pieces.
Yeah, we'll take it in pieces. This is somebody we've listened to their questions before. Yeah. His name is A.G. Squires. Could you give an overview of how dirt bike suspension works, what the stroke, rebound, compression, etc. are, and what they mean? What changing the front end does respectively to the handling of the bike? I feel like I recall you guys saying at one point Chris Kiefer had a podcast on the terminology and gets into explaining the suspension well. Do I have that right? So he's just wondering about those types of things.
So let's pick up right there. So let's just talk about the basics of suspension and like what our guy's asking about, that kind of stuff. And just so you know, we're mainly going to be talking about dirt bikes and not anything else really.
Yeah.
Motocross and off-road. We'll talk about motocross and off-road, trail bikes kind of thing, not so much street or anything else like that.
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
There's a lot to that. There's a lot of variables. The suspension components themselves basically are around the dampening curve, right? You have oil that goes through shims, creates different dampening curves, compression dampening, rebound dampening, high speed, low speed. That's what your adjustments are for. Different components act differently, right? So you have a closed cartridge fork, you have an open cartridge fork. Different things work better in different areas. Like an open cartridge fork has a tendency to work better at high speeds like Baja. Where a closed cartridge fork, you have, very different options there. KYB, Showa, WP, some work better at low speeds. Like for a KYB or KYB conversion on your air forks, we prefer KYB because it's got a low speed valve. It feels more planted. We like it on hard enduro, first, second gear stuff, supercross, stuff like that.
And that's what's on our 350s we rode today is the KYB kit on both of those. Does one of them have a WP or are they both? I think they're both a KYB kit, right?
One's a 6500.
Oh, one's a 6500. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, with the 6500, it has a little more bypass, a little more free bleed that allows the wheel to follow the ground a little bit better at speed.
So real quickly, explain open cartridge and closed as far as that cartridge system in the fork.
So a closed cartridge, which is your Yamaha, your stock Yamaha fork, your stock Honda fork, your stock Cowie, motocross forks.
And the new, which we'll get into later, the new KTM 350 XCF that we have. Yeah, that has
the Explorer closed cartridge fork.
Closed cartridge. Okay, so tell us about that.
So it is a closed circuit. It's sealed. When it compresses, there's a spring that moves inside to allow it to move. No air gets in there, no cavitation, constant dampening. Your valving's got to be really precise, otherwise it's going to pack, it's going to deflect. Where an open cartridge, you have the air on top of the oil. Sometimes it bounces around, sometimes you'll get a little bit of cavitation, but the wheel is faster, generally a faster fork, and it'll follow the ground. Everything doesn't have to be as precise because there's more bypass, there's more stuff going on there, not as much dampening.
And that open cartridge he's talking about, that's on, which we went over this week, is on that EXC right behind you.
Yep.
Right?
That's that new closed cartridge fork.
Yeah. No. I don't think this one.
Yep.
I don't think
it does.
It does have it.
Yep.
So this bike actually has the new fork on it.
Yep.
Okay. So then that gas didn't.
The gas is always usually a year behind the other bikes.
Yeah, they're really cheaping out there.
I'm a year ahead of you.
Yeah.
So
this EXE for sure is the new one. Can you tell that?
Yes.
It looks like
It is the new one. Yeah.
No, I know.
From what I can tell, it looks like the new one.
We're good? Okay,
it
so
has
I
those
was
two
under
white
the impression that...
It says right here, closed cartridge.
There you go.
Perfect.
Sweet. Okay, so we're in agreement because one of the things that came up was our buddy bought a 300 gas, 24. And we thought that the only difference was the brake tech and so forth, and they snuck him and got him the older EXE
The older
forks.
generation.
Yeah, the older generation forks, which you kind of say are about a 15-year-old kind of fork design, right?
We convert it to a 15-year-old fork to make it better. It's actually not as good as the 15-year-old fork.
Okay.
It's a single-sided compression and rebound, but it's actually the rebound and compression dampening is in one leg, but they got the adjustments on different legs. So you're trying to control both forks with really one compression piston and one rebound piston, and it has a tendency to top out and not dampen in that well. So we'll convert it to, most companies will convert it to a dual compression, dual rebound as of 15 years ago.
Okay.
And it works a lot better. That's actually what I'm running in my 500 currently.
And that just, it costs more to switch things like that over. You have to buy those parts to do it.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So what's the next part of his question?
The other part of the question is when someone is starting to play around on clickers, like what should they do? Like should they be messing with clickers? If they are going to mess with clickers, what direction should they go in depending on how they're feeling?
So everybody's afraid to touch clickers, right? Well, the great thing about clickers is they go both ways. So it's good to start with your base setting. Your manual has that base setting. I do recommend when you set your bike up, set your sag, check your clickers to make sure they do match your manual. In the motocross world, you have guys like Motocross Action and Kiefer that will give you suggestions that work better. In the off-road world, you don't really have a lot of that, so it's best to kind of base it off your manual and just start playing from there.
And when you're saying that those stock settings, you're going to try to get those off the manual. And if a guy buys a used bike, he needs to go try to find those stock settings because there's no telling where that bike's at, right?
Correct.
And there's some of that stuff's online if they don't have the manual. I think
the manuals are all online now.
They can find the manuals online. Okay. So, and then as far as sag settings, what's a good suggestion there? To start with what the manual's telling you?
Yes. So every year we have to, when they change a chassis or they change suspension components, we have to get the bike, we have to check the sag, we have to see, is that sag good for that chassis? Sometimes it depends on the rider too. Some riders prefer it at one setting and other riders prefer it at another. You got guys from 5'4" to 6'7", so you really have to find out what's good for you.
Hold on a second. How has sag changed over the years? So let's just talk about older, two strokes. Has sag always been in that 105 range, or have you seen it change throughout the years as chassis have changed?
Yeah, like our 95 CR250 here. So we got a 30-year-old bike and compared to, say, a new bike.
Yeah, it's varied from over the years from 90 millimeters to now the off-road bikes to 110.
Is that because the chassis gotten stiffer?
No, just geometry of the
Just
bike.
the way they set the geometry of the
length
bike
of
up.
the shocks, linkage ratios. There's so many
because
variables.
so we talk sag, right? And so this is the perfect point, and going back to the manual, and that is that bike could be 90 millimeters and that bike's 105 or 108 or whatever it is. So there is no general rule as to where to start sag. It has to be specific for the bike and the rider.
Yes, correct. And the person that's done the most testing and data on that bike would be the manufacturer. So even sometimes you can get it to work a little bit better than what the manufacturer recommended. If there isn't an expert out there that's done the testing and put it online, it's best to kind of start where the manual is, and then it's personal preference. Is a bike riding high in the front? Does it feel like it's knifing in the front? You can make those chassis adjustments.
Can you watch a guy ride that doesn't have terrible technique, that has decent technique, and kind of tell what the bike is doing by watching them go around the track?
I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, just from so many years of doing it.
Yeah. So you can say, looks like the sag's low, not enough free sag, forks are too low, this looks stiff, that looks,
Yeah,
soft.
absolutely. Now I can.
Yeah.
But it took years and years to acquire that skill.
You're right. As far as today, we were out and actually did some clickers today, which I don't do a lot of because I like to just ride and leave.
We know your policy.
Right.
Go to the track, unload, and ride.
It was overcast today. It was so awesome. We had a good time with Spencer's, last ride here for a little bit. And so I wanted to get his money's worth. So we rode a little longer and did some clickers on, but we had these two bikes, did clickers on both bikes. And what's funny about clickers is, like you said, you can put it back. Don't be scared.
Yeah.
Put it back. And for whatever it's worth, we were parked next to Gary Sutherland, former pro off-road, and Jeff Matasevich was there. He came over and he asked for a 14T handle. He was adjusting the rebound high speed on his shock. Just barely moved it. I mean, barely. Like, an eighth of a turn.
He felt like it was stepping out a little bit too much. So
he adjusted his high speed. He turned it out, I think, an eighth of a turn. Small amount.
Well, that's something else interesting, and that is something that you think people are afraid to touch clickers. They're really afraid to touch the high speed.
Yeah.
It's like, why is that?
It's just they don't understand it.
Yeah.
Explain maybe what exactly, because people talk about high speed and low speed. Talk about what exactly that's doing in the sense of what am I going to feel differently if I'm adjusting either of those.
So some people will get it confused when they read high speed and they read low speed. Sometimes they think it's the travel or the speed that they're going, but it's the shaft speed of the shock. So if you're going through big rollers where the shock's just slowly going in and out, that is a low speed movement. Flat corners where the bike's just squatting nice and slow, those are low speed movements. High speed is, your fourth gear, Glen Helen, you hit a pothole. You land off a jump into the flat. The shaft speed's moving at fast speeds. Generally, the high speed can also be used to raise and lower the height of the bike too. It just depends on the valving inside, how much it's going to affect the performance of the shock as well.
How much do the high speed and low speed affect each other at all in terms of the movement of that shock?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Okay.
No, they don't really overlap as much as people would think.
Okay.
Now, so let's get into a situation if we're at Glen Helen like today, and those adjustments. What if we're doing that high speed on that rear shock? If I dial it out, what's it going to do? And if I dial it in, what's it going to change? Which direction are we going to go?
Well, if you dial it out, it's going to make it softer. So if you've ever been on a bike and you hit a hole and it feels like the shock goes through your back, right? That's generally not enough high-speed dampening. So by turning the high speed in, that'll absorb that a lot better.
Okay.
But that will affect, how it squats as well.
So then it's not going to squat as much.
Correct.
So there's always a trade-off. Always, when you're adjusting something, it's going to make one area better here, but then it's going to be a compromise here, which might be good. You know,
but the low speed doesn't affect the high speed as much as the high speed affects the whole shock.
One of the things I notice is sometimes, and I've been out with other suspension guys, and we're out there, and sometimes I say, "Hey, the front end's too stiff, and I want to soften it up," and then it's the opposite. It's the opposite. Like, and today I thought, I go, man, it's too soft, and I came in and I go, let me go stiffer. I went in 4 clicks stiffer. And it was like, that's perfect. I think I probably could have backed it back to 2, but I always like to make bigger changes than guys doing 1 click or 2 clicks.
Yeah.
I want to see if I can really tell, because I'm not as skilled on the bike as some guys, as I say, a faster guy who's been testing a lot. So I'm not as skilled in that way. So I like to kind of do 3 or 4 clickers at a time. What do you think of that?
That's what I recommend. If you're trying to get a general idea of what it's doing and what changes are going to do what, I do recommend going 2 to 3 clicks at a time.
Jay, you are a suspension guy.
I'm an expert.
You're an expert.
Right.
All right.
So what I've learned is I like to do 3 or 4 clicks, see if it made it worse or better, and then go back towards it like 1 click and go, okay, is there in between? When I'm messing with forks, especially, that's what I like to try to do.
Yeah, if it's better, if you go one direction and it's better, go a little bit more.
Yeah.
It could get better again, or it could start getting worse. Then you can back it off.
Do you have any idea or percentage of guys you see at the track that simply will not? I mean, they'll go to Paris, they'll go to Kauai, they'll go to Glen Helen, and all 3 very different places, that they won't touch anything on their suspension at all? I mean, how often do you think that happens?
A lot. There's a lot of guys that don't touch their stuff once they're happy with it.
This is another reason I ride really only one place.
You just want to make a judgment.
You know, our settings in SoCal, it's a couple clicks of rebound and maybe a couple clicks of compression from, Paula to Paris to Glen Helen. It's not huge. So you could generally get away with once your bike's
Is that because of the kind of dirt we have?
The hard pack dirt.
The hard pack dirt.
Yep.
Okay. So in loam or deep rut stuff, it's
a different setting. Yeah, that's where our amateur kids struggle when they go back east.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
The few times I've ridden it, real dirt, as you say, and stuff, it's like, because you let off the gas and the turn's forever away.
It comes to a stop.
You're like, whoa. You're like, it's slowing down. I'm not even hitting the brakes. I just let off, and it's like, whoa. So that when you have real dirt that absorbs all that energy, you have way more, time you can hold it on, which is difficult to get used to. It's just a lot different out here.
Yeah, we struggle in the pros that way too, because like our first test day is the first national, because the tracks are not prepped like the national tracks are. So the first test day, true test day, is the first day of the national.
One thing I want to, now that we're talking nationals, let's show your shirts. We didn't really mention this.
In the room.
Yeah, it's the big elephant in the room.
We look like thing 1 and thing 2.
Yeah. I call this. I call these Patriot shirts.
Yeah, I like them, but it still looks like we're about to cause some problems.
It does. We're gonna storm Paula.
Yeah.
So anyway, we don't have anything against other tracks. We're just saying, and for those that are true motocross fans, and especially if they've ever been to Glen Helen for a big race like this, nothing's better.
I'm going to wear this on Saturday.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, I'm going to.
Will they let you in? They've done that. But
I got a pass from GL, so it's going to be on him.
That's
wear,
awesome.
wear a sweater over until you're through the gate.
Yeah. No, you're wearing that. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I did buy it for you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I spent the money. So they're not making money on the things. It was like $20 a shirt, so I was like, okay, we can buy them.
It's not Glen Helen causing problems. It's Jay.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. I know there's a lot of when people use the term politics, it really should just be replaced with money issues involved. So that's really what.
Well, that's the same thing with politics.
It's the same.
They're both the same.
So unfortunately, it's the same thing. So anyway, so getting to those nationals, and nothing duplicates those kind of rough, gnarly conditions. So I want to shift questions a little bit. Let's go. So brand new bike, you recommended. Guy goes to his stock settings. Get those out of the book, which it should come set up correctly at the stock settings.
If the dealer did their job.
Yeah, set up that sag. And on most current bikes with a linkage, that sag ranges from 100 to 110
Oh, so that's interesting,
right?
real quick. So the dealer should kind of make that base setting on the suspension.
Correct, because
When they
everybody
set up
makes
the bike.
mistakes, right? So if that suspension was put together at the factory on Friday night, as we say,
built on Friday.
the dealer should go through and check it out really well.
Okay,
and there's some dealers are better than others.
Yeah.
Of doing that. Some will grease some bolts, some will make sure everything's tight, some won't. But so we do recommend that you go through and check that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so on that stock bike, do that. Also, do you have any tips on a brand new stock bike? We have a little video on what we recommend for people to do, but do you have any other suggestions on that brand new stock bike before they ride it?
they have to grease everything.
Okay.
Especially nowadays, they are coming a little drier than they used to.
Yeah. Have you noticed that, like on every brand, just about?
Every brand. Yeah, it's not just pointing at one. It's every brand.
Because
This
whenever
is
I
not
show
the
one,
first time mentioned on this show.
so whenever I show,
Greaseflation.
I'll show a photo or a video of a Honda, let's say, with very minimal grease, and guys are like bagging on the Honda and everything, and I'm like, it's the same thing on all the other brands as well. So I'm noticing they're all skimping. The only one bike I did see that was greased a little bit more is actually the Suzuki's. So
it is ironic though.
They have more time.
Yeah, more time. Because
No, it's the same process. They haven't changed their process.
It's the same.
Same deal.
Same process.
It's
It's the same lady building it from 20 years ago.
that's awesome. So,
same linkage,
and for whatever it's worth, the new we have 2 years racing that new 250. We grease everything, and that bike has been really durable. It's taken some abuse.
They're good.
Yeah. So it holds up well.
I'm not greasing the linkage on this bike.
That's not pretty good of you. So
But the swing arm, you probably do.
we were
Swing arm I will, but not the linkage.
We were talking about a brand new stock bike. You see all the settings. The sags range from 100 to 110 range millimeters. We should have a link. We should put a link to a good video on setting sag. I have one I did with the Rocky Mountain guys.
It'll be in the description of the video.
Okay. So for those that go to the video, we can have some good descriptions on that. We're going to do one of our own someday, but we don't have it, I don't think, as of yet. So setting sag is important. Obviously, we tell guys get honest. We'll set sag in the garage. And people go, you need to have your gear on. And you go, yeah, we know, because we're just roughing it out typically, and we also kind of know, hey, if we want 105, and if we set it at 102 in the shop, we're usually pretty close.
Correct. You've done enough of them on enough bikes that you've checked them on and off.
Right.
So you know the difference. Like we do the same thing with our riders.
You kind of know, okay, so with gear on, it's going to be in here. Also, I feel like in the shop, because at the track, you're not on a level surface. Typically, you're out there, and it's a little bit more. It's nice to get a good base setting in the shop when I first do it. That's why I like to do it. And
people will be like, "Oh, you set sag standing up, and you set sag sitting down." It's just the base,
right? From
what the dealer said, and you're going to adjust it one way or the other. And for us, we do all of our sag standing up, arches on the pegs, hands by your side looking straight ahead, so you're perfectly neutral, because it's the same every single time, and we know it's always 2 millimeters lower than sitting, but being the same every time allows us to eliminate any variables.
We need an electric motor on that so that you can set the sag while you're riding.
I saw the way he's describing it to set sag is the way I see most the factory teams doing it.
Yeah.
And I see a few little variables, but most of them, Jet Lawrence, whatever, I see him, he's, boom. And I see most of these guys are setting sag that way.
Yeah, because if you move back a half an inch or an inch on the seat, it drops.
Yep. Oh yeah, I can fully. Spencer will know. I go, hey, I can move and tell him, okay, it's at 105 now, and he goes, yeah. I can kind of play with it and get it there just by leaning. So we do, and we'll take a average between standing, sitting, and kind of have our reference.
Yeah. Well, that's another factor too, because professionals don't as much, but amateurs end up, as you get tired, getting farther and farther back on the bike. So I mean, you're going to affect handling no matter what. If you're not in a perfect riding position at all times.
That's why sag is just a reference. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a suggestion of where to start. We change different bikes, different models, different directions, and that's why I make them, when they stand on the pegs, they're on their arches, because if they're on their toes like they ride, and they drop their heels, it will drop like 4 to 5 millimeters just by dropping your heels. Yeah. And that is good, because you'll realize how much you can load the rear wheel and get more traction by dropping your heels.
Okay.
It shows a lot.
All right, next is used bike. A guy buys a used bike, whether it's 1 to 10 years old, they buy a used bike from somebody, and I get guys write me all the time, and they just bought this bike and the suspension's terrible. And I'm like, did you check anything? So what are your thoughts on a used bike? You get a used bike, what do you do?
Well, when you go to buy a used bike, it's always good to ask, hey, when was the last time the suspension was serviced? How many hours are on it since the oil was changed? If they don't know, it probably hasn't been done. And, the general reference is you should get your oil changed every year, whether you ride it or not.
Hey, the guy selling the bike doesn't know, trust me.
If he doesn't, then
No, I'm just saying, like the average guy selling a used bike, he doesn't know when it was serviced last.
So it's good just to kind of, add that into your budget and just get that done.
And for those that don't know, what happens when you're not servicing your oil? Because I know what happens because I built all these CR250s. They were
and you go through like 3 forks to get one.
Yes, and so I know what it takes. So tell people what happens when that oil is old, and what happens.
Well, even if the oil isn't black, right? Even if it isn't broke down, it's still like old oil starts to separate, the polymers go bad. So even if the oil looked good, if you would have an oil analysis done, you would find out it's not good anymore.
And when it turns black and starts to, what happens as far as the wear goes?
It starts to wear out more parts, starts to wear out coatings, and then you're not going to.
So can you save parts by changing oil?
Absolutely.
Like I would say more frequently, but like when you're supposed to.
Yep.
Now, so let's you said once a year minimum. Now, let's say a guy's racing at a novice to intermediate level. He's racing twice a month. What's a good interval for somebody like that?
For a motocross guy, they're kind of they're kind of checking their hours. So we say at 40 hours, it's pretty much done.
And I think I get similar things from other suspension shops in that range as well. I think that can range from 20 to 40 hours. I think I've seen on what guys will recommend.
Yeah.
Not everyone can afford to do that, but that's what they're recommending.
Okay, so that's interesting. But what about a top guy? How often? Not should they, but how often are they getting their suspension oil changed or suspension rebuilt?
It really depends on the discipline of the suspension.
Well, let's say top motocross and supercross guys right now.
Well, motocross guys we do every weekend.
Every weekend.
Yep.
And new shims and everything. And
no new oil.
Just new oil.
New oil.
Okay.
And let's say also, what's the performance? Because we're talking about durability and wearing out parts, but what's the performance difference? If let's say I have a really good setup on my 24 Yamaha 250, for instance, and I put 60, 70 hours on it without blowing a fork seal. So I put this much time on it. How much is that performance change with the oils in the shock and forks?
Again, there's a lot of variables there, but it will go away. As the oil gets hot, it's going to break down. It's going to get thinner, and you're going to lose dampening. It's going to get faster, softer.
So that's what I feel like, is that the ones I've ridden that are older. And so are guys probably just going in, stiffening up the bike as the oil breaks down?
Ones that aren't afraid of clickers, yes.
Could the rear end wear out quicker than the front end? Could the shock?
No, they're designed usually to go about the same.
The same.
But the rear runs a lot hotter than
way hotter, right? Yes. I mean, you can't even touch the shock body at times.
And what happens with the rear for bikes that sit is the nitrogen starts to drop. Mm-hmm. So that becomes a big factor.
Okay, hold on a second. We're gonna shift really quick. What happened to Kenny's bike?
It did what it was supposed to do. When it came apart, that's where they do come apart. I don't know exactly what happened.
Have you seen a shock come apart like that before?
No.
All right.
So I
was trying to get.
I've asked the industry.
Nobody.
Nobody's gonna say anything. But
but we've never seen it before.
That's why it's like.
There you go.
But it did come apart the way it was supposed to come apart. Like just for the safety of his leg, it didn't blow the adjuster into the side of his leg.
Yeah.
So.
It could have been worse.
It's just hard to say.
I don't know. It could be drastically worse.
How much worse, right? Like,
yeah,
it already blew his leg apart.
It did his leg apart in a different way, right?
Yeah.
But it's product time. You're getting behind. So show a product, and we'll do.
For product, we already talked about products. So let's do. Dave brought a couple cool tools. Let's do cool tools segment. So tell us about the couple tools you have. I said, hey, bring in a couple of your favorite tools. Let's talk about those real quick.
And the funny thing is there's not like a lot of cool tools, right? Like
he goes, what do you have? I go,
everybody kind of uses the same thing.
But I go, if you have a favorite wrench or anything, but he's got a couple cool things he brought in. Tell us about these.
There's a few things like this little thing right here, especially if you're a DIY guy. I just put a Schrader valve in the end of an air chuck.
Yep.
And what this does is this allows you to set your nitrogen regulators, because the nitrogen regulators are usually a dial and they're not very accurate. And what this does allows you to plug in your air line, your nitrogen line, and set your regulator for your shock exactly to what you want. And what's also cool is you can also check all your air gauges.
Okay.
To the pressure. So it's just a Schrader valve inside of an air fitting.
Okay.
That's it. One of my favorite tools, because it makes
sure. How are you checking your air gauges with that? Show me what do you do?
So once you have an air gauge that's accurate.
There's one right there.
you just put this in your nitrogen tank and you check them all.
Okay.
You set it to one. So if I set this to, say, 14 pounds or 13 pounds for your tires, or 150 pounds for your forks, you can check all your gauges to the same one and see how they vary.
Okay.
Because once a nitrogen regulator is set, it's set.
Very cool. All right. And what's next?
And this little thing I hear, a lot of people that bleed shocks by hand, they shake them, they Maroc them, they spill oil everywhere. So we just made a little cup. These are little paint cups that you buy at Harbor Freight, $10 for like a 6-pack. Put a fitting in it that slides into the high-speed adjuster, and now when you're bleeding your shock, you just have a gravity cup.
Nice.
To fill. So
I've seen that at different shops. I've seen some with a rubber piece. I've seen different things at different shops.
Yeah. Everybody has a different way, but they come with a plastic one inside of them from Harbor Freight that you can just grind down. Even it doesn't have to be that precise because there's an O-ring in here. Just make sure it's a tight fit. And if you're going to bleed your shock, it just makes it a little bit easier. Those are the only two really things that I've made that we use. Everything else is bought from the suppliers.
Okay. Hey, Spencer, grab our bucket for us.
Bucket.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is when I went to Dave's shop, he had these buckets in the ground where when he would disassemble suspension with mainly forks. You want to pull out the... Are they clean or dirty?
They're
Okay.
a little oily. Yeah.
Oh, here, get us a rag so we don't mess up Donnie's thing.
I wouldn't set it on there. But
Yeah.
There's some.
So this, grab a towel there. So this, tell us how you came up with this thing.
I don't know. I just envisioned it. I was like, what can I use to hold the forks up to let them drain?
Perfect.
To kind of help my time. I'm
Yeah.
gonna sit there and hold the thing all day. So, and you want to put it somewhere where it's not going to get scratched and it's
Right.
it's not in your way. So, I just envisioned it one day and I've said, how can I make it work? And it actually, all the pieces just barely fit in a bucket that way.
It's super genius, and for whatever it's worth, what's really cool about this, for those that are listening, we'll have photos online, and he's made up a little sheet that tells you what pieces to buy and what sizes to cut them. Right?
Yep.
Right there.
Oh, it's like your stand drawings.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And so we mentioned this before, and then a bunch of people hit me up, and we haven't really promoted it in a while. So you can either email me or Dave direct and get those drawings for these pieces. It's just 1/2-inch PVC, and he's using Schedule 40.
Hey, it's really nice that you support the community that way. Seriously, that people are willing to do things like this
because he knows there's people at home.
Yeah, that aren't just like, oh, I did this and I'm not sharing it. It's really cool that you share this kind of stuff.
And it's so cool when I'm in his shop, and he just, as soon as he puts apart, he just drops it on here, and it's all within that bucket, and then he can deal with the oil later, and it just sits on here and just.
Why does it seem like fork oil is like the stickiest,
it is.
worst stuff?
That's why I knew to get this
planet.
down here. And it drains out the bottom. He's got a cool setup. So really cool thing. You can hit up Dave, and you can just grab your own $2, $5.
If you buy something at Harbor Freight.
Oh, they are free.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Or donate $5 at Firehouse Subs, and they'll give you one.
Oh, they do it too.
Yeah.
There you go.
Or we get them at the donut shop, because we go to the donut shop quite often.
The donut shops has them for some reason. Weird.
Nice.
Did you have guessed that we would
good to know.
Never would have guessed that. Weird.
But this is a cool product, but something that I ask suspension dudes a lot. And we don't have to name names because we don't want to lose sponsors for the show. But I see a ton of products that maybe go on dude suspensions that I think about and I go, that might not help performance, or that might hinder performance and they're doing it for longevity, or they think it's for performance. Are there things that you were like, we're not going to mention the things that don't hurt anything, but maybe the things where you're like, hey, when someone brings a shock in or a fork and you see it on there, or they have it on their bike, you're like, take that off because that's going to do more harm than good for you?
No, not necessarily. Like I say, not without throwing anybody under the bus or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's nothing really out there that I've seen that's dangerous or that's going to ruin a fork. Some people have luck with bleeders, push button bleeders, and some don't. Sometimes they break, sometimes they don't, but they are really convenient. So, it's like, do I want to deal with it maybe weeping a little bit here and there? Just for the convenience.
Most suspension guys absolutely hate them. They don't want them on the bike. You know that, like,
because if they accidentally get pushed, it ruins the performance, and then you're getting phone calls that it doesn't work, and or they ship them with it, and the boxes show up
full of oil,
or they don't even drop them off.
Or the front wheels touching the ground when they bleed them.
Yeah.
Put a vacuum on them.
And so if those bleeders are perfect, everything's fine. But if they start to seep and and some of them are, you don't know if it's actually leaking a little bit. It could be shooting a little air, right?
Yep.
And so it could affect performance. So I know that's a concern there. You know what product we actually tried that was actually surprisingly interesting was this counter shock weight. Have you seen this thing?
I've seen it, but I haven't tested it.
We tried it on a dual sport, and it was surprisingly, it's an interesting feeling. For a dual sport trail bike, I don't know if there was any total downside, but it wasn't a huge improvement, but
it's planted. It makes it plant a lot
it almost
better.
felt like you had a front moose in, like a good front moose, like the front wheel just stayed like this, and it was an interesting feeling. So I don't know what totally, I think we have too many bikes to have it on every bike, and I don't think in motocross that kind of thing's probably realistic, where you need the front wheel up, you need the front wheel off the ground. But on a dual sport thing, it was really a kind of interesting, cool feeling. So I was really surprised at how well that we both liked it. We hop off and on a bike with it and without on this dual sport ride. And
there's a lot of companies that make a lot of stuff, and you just got to look and see the factory guys running it. Is it necessary? It is a business. People do make stuff to make money. It looks better. Factory.
We always hear these numbers, and I'm not saying the exact number, but I've heard a set of factory suspension on a bike can be $20,000-$30,000. That's
accurate? Really high end stuff. Is that
possible? Is that possible?
Yeah, it is. Because the factory guys have to run suspension that's sellable to the public, like in the 250 class. So they'll sell it to you, but they got to put a pretty steep price tag on it. If you're going to buy traditional A-kit stuff, you're looking probably $8 to $10,000
for both,
for front and rear together. Yeah, for a complete set.
There you go.
But there is a tip for that bleeder that we were just talking about, especially on like an air fork. If you try to ride an air fork for off-road, sometimes it gets a little harsh because you got that head pressure. When you're on the trail on a flat road, you can push those air bleeders and create a reverse pressure in it, and it helps suck the fork down and gives it a little more compliancy. So
there you go.
Dude, I have a hard enough time riding straight down that road. I'm not pushing anything while I'm riding.
Pushing buttons.
So if it's feeling a little harsh at the end of the day, you can help yourself out.
Yeah. One thing we saw today, a post from the pro race, is that the KTM bikes had this long. We'll try to throw a photo of it in here for those watching. They had a wire or.
It looks like a front sag tool. It bolts to the bottom of the triple clamp and goes to the front or the top of the caliper, and it measures.
So it looks like it's a data acquisition thing on the fork.
They do. There's a lot more people playing with data acquisition right now.
And so they're running it in practice. They're not racing with it on there.
No, they can't.
Okay. And they can't loop for the rules, right?
What's that?
Yeah, for the rules, they probably can't have anything external like that on there. And I don't think they'd want to, but I think it's good. So they're trying to figure. I was thinking about it for dirt bikes. Data acquisition's got to be kind of difficult, because I was today when we were riding Glen Helen, that track changes, and you're sometimes 3 and 4 feet away. You're not taking the exact same line. Like a road race bike, you're within inches of the same line the entire lap. If you
millimeters,
they're just staying right there. So I don't know. That data acquisition's got to be pretty tough, right?
Dirt bikes would be the last place you'll be able to use it for sure.
It's going to be tough because it's got to be a feeling, and like you said, of the suspension technicians watching and learning.
Well, there's 2 guys on the same team with completely different bike setups, right?
Yeah,
so.
Different suspension even.
Yeah.
Some teams
different.
What's a shock dyno do?
It measures the dampening curve.
It does.
So shock dynos are good to build 2 shocks evenly. If you've already done some track testing and then you test the curve, you can see the curves, you can manipulate the shock on the dyno to get it kind of in the ballpark where you want it before you go back out to the track. So you don't have to go to the track 10 times to see what changes are going to do what.
And so say what the word dampening, we've used that a few times. What does that mean?
That's the resistance that's created inside the shock. Right, that it slows it down, makes
resistance
it stiffer
with the oil.
Put it in simple terms.
And flowing through the shims, the shim stack.
So the oil's got to flow through orifices, through shims. It slows the oil down, makes it either stiffer on compression or slower on rebound. The more dampening you add, the slower it gets or the stiffer it gets. And your clickers can only adjust a little bit of that.
You should send us a couple photos of a cool shim stack, like one ready to go on.
Oh.
Or one assembled and maybe one where you have it ready, because when all the shims are ready to go on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get that to add in.
How different are the compression and rebound circuits as far as dampening goes? So compression is going to be probably a lot more resistant, right? Because the rebound, you're just trying to get the shock to move it, whatever speed.
They're pretty, percentage-wise, they're pretty close.
They're close.
Yeah. Like even in off-road trucks, they don't even do stuff shim for shim. They do more 60%, 40%. So it's not as far off as you would think it is.
Okay.
Very nice. Yeah.
Are we okay on time?
We're okay on time. We can wrap up if you want to.
What's our next?
The last question we could do is about bigger dudes.
Oh yeah. This is a question I just asked him about.
Yes.
Go ahead and talk. Just
so
mention
he's on a Yamaha
what's his name?
250F. Jordan.
Okay.
Jordan.
Big guy.
He has heavy springs, or he wants heavy springs. Race Tech may be accurate, but unfortunately they can't make that heavy because the size of the wire won't fit between the cartridges and the outer tube. Normally what we do is run heaviest possible. I'd recommend calling Cannon Racecraft in Oklahoma.
Okay, so that's a question I asked Dave about last week, and big guy, and I'm stoked big guys riding. You got to ride. And if he's trying to ride on stock suspension, it could be tough. If he's well over 300 pounds, that's pretty hard, right? Okay. And I didn't realize that there's a company, because Race Tech and Ibach, what are some of the other they all have springs.
Next make springs.
Everybody's got springs, right?
Moose makes them now. Moose imports them from Japan now.
Okay, cool.
Parts Unlimited.
Parts Limited. So, but they kind of will stop at a certain level, they got
a guess at what they're going to sell.
Yeah.
And they're going to carry whatever they can sell.
What about back in the day, people would preload them with PVC and stuff? What about that?
Yeah, it's not as effective anymore. That was kind of a Band-Aid back in the day.
Yeah.
These bikes don't run much preload anymore.
That's how old Donnie is.
Yeah, that's how old I am.
They had 2 shocks back then.
They did. Yeah. We used to lay them down. It was really cool.
So, yeah. Anyway. All right,
but so bigger dudes. Sometimes you can find.
I think it's cool that there's a shop that actually would make custom springs for a guy. Yep. So I thought that was pretty cool that there's somebody that actually does that, and it's probably going to be expensive to get those made.
No, they're not that bad, really.
What would you think?
It's the same as a regular spring, pretty much. There's just a lead time.
Yeah, to get it made,
and they can only make them so stiff. Because of the room that's in there to work with. Mm-hmm. If the wire gets too big, it's going to rub the reservoir. It's going to rub the side of the fork tube. So
if you had an infinite length the shot could be, it could get stiffer. But you're stuck with the length the shot can be.
Yeah, it has to do with how many active coils and how
and the fork springs. You're limited within that area. Okay, or you're hitting stuff. Okay. One thing that I had a guy write back, I don't think I even told you, there was a guy and he was upset. He got his suspension back from his shop and he's holding the fork side like this, shaking them this way, and they're making noise. You could hear the springs moving. He was all stressed out, and we, assured him. He checked with a couple of guys. There was still enough preload on him that it was, and this is an older bike too. This was like a 2000 CR 250 or something like that. Do you get guys concerned about things like that when they,
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Especially if it's been sitting like on the rack for a little while, or it's been in the shipping box, and they get it and there's no oil that's been splashed onto the springs. They're a little bit louder, and so guys really are like, "Wow!" Oh my God, just shake them up and down, get some oil on them. They do rattle.
Yeah. Or when they show up, they feel them and they go, "Hey, it doesn't feel like you did anything."
Dude, we've literally had people do that. Yeah. Somebody in Utah said that once. I got it back from a guy and I just didn't. I pushed on it in the garage. I'm like,
yeah, you're not gonna.
Can't help.
You're not gonna move it fast enough.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Let's do album.
Okay. Time for a CD. We go over a CD every.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
He's worried.
Hey, what year? I didn't look at the year of this. I'm gonna say this is 86. Hold on.
Which Cinderella album is this?
Yeah, is this 86?
Is it self-titled?
Night Songs.
Can I borrow your cheaters?
No.
I'm as old as you.
All right. Cinderella Night Songs. Tom Kiefer is the lead singer. First of all, his 2 new albums, I say newer, they're like in the last 5 years. He has 2 newer albums, Tom, and we just went and saw him in Vegas. Awesome Tom Kiefer. Night Songs is the first album, and almost every song on the first 3 albums are all amazing, but it has Shake Me, Night Songs, Shake Me, Nobody's Fool, Nothing for Nothing, Once Around the Ride, Hell on Wheels, Somebody Save Me, In From the Outside, Push Push, and Back Home Again.
Released June 9th, 1986.
Oh, yeah. Was that the best years of your life, Donnie?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
Year I graduated high school.
It was only 36 minutes, by the way.
The whole album.
Whole album.
10 songs. That's all you needed. And then it was Heartbreak. It was Long Cold Winter, and then Heartbreak Station, and then grunge took over. And again, we say this again.
We can't say it.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, this is happy music, and grunge is the opposite of happy. Typically, it didn't make you want to be happy and wanted you to be sad. And
no unaliving.
No, yeah. So then
you can say that.
Yes. So anyway, great album for those that are wanting to check that out. Is Night Songs. But my personal favorite, but this is the one that's got the most hits. But the Heartbreak Station is a little bit more bluesy. That was a shift away from kind of the more poppy, hair metal, where hair rock we'd call it or whatever. But the bluesy Heartbreak Station was really cool. So great album there.
You're always a classic rock guy.
Right.
Did you ever have the hair? I can't imagine.
I did have a bit of a mullet. That's about it.
He had frosted tips.
That wasn't that hair.
Yeah.
I had hair.
You had hair.
I had hair.
Are we good on time?
We're okay.
We're good. We're at an hour.
We're over an hour.
Okay. You guys are usually getting on me if we go this long. That's awesome.
Last time we said something, you got upset with us.
It's a guess. When we do the guess, we kind of just admit it's an hour.
We can throw you off. We're not throwing him off.
We didn't get to our second page of questions, but we're going to do that next time. And they weren't suspension related.
They weren't suspension, so I wasn't too worried about it.
Okay, so suspension. Any parting tips? Or first of all, how do people get a hold of you?
SchmidtPerformance.com, my Instagram @SchmidtPerformance. Feel free to email or write. Like we offer a lot for like the DIY guy too, man. I like to.
You work with a lot of suspension guys on their own. I like that.
Yeah, we work with the suspension guys all over the United States. We ship some shims and then help them walk them through putting them in Israel and Spain and Costa Rica. So Canada. And then there's other suspension guys and small shops too that'll just send me their stuff to be valved, just the rods, and then they'll install it themselves. So there's a bunch of different options that we do just to kind of help people make more money and enjoy more dirt bikes. We can't do it all. Well,
yeah, you do a great job. I sent a ton of people over to you over the years, and good deal, fair price for good work. So
appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So anyway, appreciate having you, Dave.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. So I think that's a wrap. You guys say, Donnie, you got a parting question?
I got a question for you. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have a lot of people helping you with different things. Was there a time that you were building motors yourself, and did you build any 4-strokes yourself?
Me?
Yeah.
You. No, 4-strokes I just did. I thought because you were looking, your eyes with your glasses, it looked like you were looking at Dave.
I'm looking at you, man.
I wasn't even paying attention but yes. So yes, I used to do a lot of 2-stroke engines.
I'm saying that nowadays in Instagram stuff, these guys aren't seeing you build motors.
Oh yeah.
So I wanted you to talk about your experience of building motors.
And up and down. We rebuilding engines Friday night before I had helper Josh was racing. We'd be putting a bottom end in. Because we were riding big bore CR 250s and we'd blow a top in, it was always stuff like that. But, doing cranks, no problem, all that kind of stuff. But once I got kind of going with Brad, it's just a whole lot easier to have somebody else do the engines, and we have more time and less stress. I did a couple 4-stroke top ends. I've done a few of those and cams and stuff. I don't like doing it. I'm really slow at it and take my time and paranoid. So it's nice to have somebody that's a little bit better, more proficient at it doing it.
My point was just that, people should still listen to you because you have done those as well.
Oh yeah. And
there you go.
And I try to stay well informed.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I try to stay well informed and up on what everybody's doing. And I'm sure someday when I step back from being so busy, I'll be able to get back to doing more stuff. It'd be fun to do more stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. That's all I got.
Okay. I have a fun final question. If
yes.
You want. Okay. This is for you three. I know what the answer would be if I didn't include this caveat. It has to be before 2010. You get a free bike, like crate, like brand new. You get it today. It shows up at your house tomorrow morning. what bike is it? It has to be pre-2010 because I know you'd all just pick a brand new 450 or 350 or whatever. So what bike pre-2010 would you pick brand new? You can go back as far as you want, like a 75 or whatever, but brand new crate from any manufacturer anywhere.
Well, that's a really hard question, honestly, because, I could pick one from each era, but what am I doing with the bike? Is it going to just...
Yeah.
No, it's up to you. You get a pick.
Is it going to just sit and look pretty?
Well, knowing you, it probably will just sit and look pretty.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I would go back to a Honda 08 Honda 450.
08 Honda 450.
Honestly, bike was so good. It was so much
Brand new.
fun and brand new.
It would be brand new.
It was so good that I probably wouldn't. If I got a new one right now, I guarantee you I would be the same speed as I am on these bikes right now.
No, it's good. Remember we did that one that I built from the ground up, and I got on. I rode it that day.
Yeah. I absolutely love the bike.
I can't believe how good this thing is.
I'd never felt anything so planted in my life as that bike.
Yeah.
It felt like it was glued to the ground in a good way.
Most people felt like it would have won the shootout for the next 3 or so years.
For sure, because I had a friend that got an 09, and I rode that thing for about 15 seconds, and I rode it right back and go, this is terrible.
Right. It took a little while for him to get that
So that's
out.
me, the 08 Honda 450.
All right, what do you got, Dave?
I'm kind of in agreement on the 08 Honda because it was a really, really good bike, but I raced Suzuki's in the early 90s, and my 91 RM250 was one of my favorite bikes
I bought one of those brand new. That's what I had. And I had that for a few years, 91, so it was cool.
Still full floater? Was it still full floater?
I don't know what it said on there, but it had camo graphics stuff.
I remember the camo graphics.
So it was rad.
It had a camo seat cover.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was.
That's right.
It was
like yellow and gray seat cover camo.
It was a cool look.
So 91 RM250.
Yeah. So for me, if it was just a nostalgic thing, it would be a 77 RM80 just because that's what I had one and it wasn't very cool, but I would have it for that. But for me, if you're going to ask me that, I'm all about, I think money would be cool. So I just have to go research what the most expensive bike I could get from.
You're going to pick some random Montesa or something.
Yes.
For a bunch.
Yeah, something that's worth 30 or 50 grand.
Okay, let's take the money aspect out, and you're going to ride the bike.
If I'm going to ride the bike,
because that's what I thought money too at first, because I thought about that Husky that the Tom White Museum.
If I'm going to ride it, I think
incredible.
If you're saying 20, I'd say a 2010.
Oh yeah,
CRF 250R, yeah, because it was fuel injected. It was the first because the 09 was still carbureted.
Yeah,
and the 2010 CRF 250R. I rode that bike for a long time, and it's that 2010 was basically the same bike through,
Is that dual exhaust on that one?
The 2010, I don't know if it did. I don't think so. No. I think the dual. It came back like in 15 or 16.
It went away and it came back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I'd probably, because fuel injection on 4-strokes was just such a game changer, as we've talked about, and it made it was just awesome.
I think that 08 Honda is better than fuel injection.
It was good when it was all set up well. And,
yeah.
Brad did that carb on that one that we did, and a quick stab was the only downfall it had. But if you rolled it on, it felt like it was fuel injected. Yeah. He did a really good job at it.
All right, that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. We'll see you next time. We work with some great companies, and here's a list of those right now. Dunlop Motorcycle Tires, Wiseco Piston, Vinco Air Shocks and Dirt Bike Parts, FMF Exhaust, Decal Works Graphics, Pro X Racing Parts, Recluse Clutch Revolution, Motion Pro Specialty Motorcycle Tools, Works Connection, Uni Filter, Klotz Oil, Cometic Gasket, MX Plastics, JE Pistons, Cardo Systems, ODI Bars and Grips. And remember, if you shop Rocky Mountain, use our link from our site, Linktree, or link in description of the videos. Thanks for watching and listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.